Hi, in this video we are going to talk about the writing lesson plan. So this assignment is due kind of towards the end of the semester. It's due on October 31st. So if you're watching this recording at the very beginning of the semester, some of the concepts and terms I'm going to be using might not make sense right now, but they will by the time you begin seriously thinking about completing this assignment at the end of October. So you might want to, save watching this for a little bit later on in the semester. So all of the materials that you need to complete your writing lesson plan you can find in this folder. I'm in the assignments space in Blackboard. If you go into the writing lesson plan folder, you can find it right here, all these things I'm discussing. And I'm going to show you these documents momentarily. There's also a link in this folder where you can actually submit your work. This will upload it to the Blackboard Grade Center where I can read it and give you feedback on your work. So know where that stuff is located. Okay, so to start, here is the page with the instructions for this lesson plan. So basically with this assignment, you are going to be selecting one of the 6 traits of writing that we have talked about in our writing workshop unit of this semester. And you are going to be writing a lesson plan that teaches children about that trait, and children should be applying that trait of writing to their own writing piece that they are working on in your class. So your lesson plan also needs to include a mentor text. It needs to include a children's book that you can share with students in order to model or demonstrate the writing trait that you are teaching in your lesson plan. Okay? So your lesson plan also needs to include several things. You need some type of introductory activity that will get students interested in the lesson plan and activate any prior knowledge they have about the writing trait. You also want to have the teacher model how the writing trait is applied. Then you need to also include some guided practice. So the students applying the writing trait to their own writing with teacher guidance. And you also need to include some independent practice where the students can independently try out the writing trait or the skill that you're teaching in your lesson to their own writing without help. Okay, so you need to make sure that your lesson plan includes those components of modeling, guided practice, and independent practice. What you also need to include in your lesson plan is multiple opportunities for students to interact with each other and with a teacher. At the elementary level, it's just not good teaching if you are, having students sit and listen to a lecture by the teacher, for the whole class period. That's not very fun. And you probably don't like that as a college student either. That's not interesting to you. Students like a chance to interact with each other. So make sure that you include that in your lesson plan. Your lesson plan also needs to be clearly written so that I can understand and visualize exactly what's going on in the classroom. And you also need to include enough details so that if a person other than you, the author of the lesson plan, picked up your lesson plan, that person could follow it with fidelity or follow it exactly as you intended the lesson plan to be followed. So think about this. Could a substitute teacher follow my lesson plan? If the answer is no, then you need to include some more details in your lesson plan. And sometimes, you have a good idea in your head of what your lesson plan looks like. So in a way, you're kind of biased. But one way to make sure that you have enough details in your lesson plan would be to ask somebody else, like a teacher that you work with or a friend, to read over your lesson plan and let you know where you need more details or point out any parts of your lesson plan that are confusing. So I strongly recommend that you don't save this for the last minute. I strongly recommend that you write your lesson plan at least a week before it's due and have someone else look it over and give you feedback on it. That's perfectly fine. So for the purpose of this assignment, you're welcome to pick any mentor text that you want to teach your writing trait that you select. And you should also be aware that you can pick any grade level that you want for this lesson plan, K through 6. So whatever is most interesting to you, you can pick that grade level. So you can go on a website like writingfix.com and find some ideas of different books that you might want to include in your lesson plan. You can also think about those picture books that you read for the picture book bibliography that we did earlier in the semester and select one of those titles if you think it's appropriate for teaching writing. That's perfectly fine. However, even though it's okay to go online and to find mentor text ideas on the internet, what you may not do is borrow a lesson plan idea from the internet or to borrow a lesson plan idea from a teacher's guide. So I know that you guys are capable of going online and finding lesson plans, using a search engine. I know you can do that. I'm not assessing you on your ability to do an internet search. I'm assessing you on your ability to apply the content and pedagogy that I've been teaching in this course to your own original lesson plan. That being said, you need to come up with your own original creative idea for this lesson plan. You can't use an idea you got elsewhere. And that includes the model lesson plan that I've uploaded to Blackboard for you to look at. Please don't use the same lesson plan idea that I have explained in that model lesson plan. You may not use that either, so it needs to be your original idea. So in terms of writing this lesson plan, there's a template that you'll be using. This is in Blackboard. It looks like this. It's the same template as the read aloud lesson plan, so you're already familiar with this. Okay, so those are the instructions, and as I just mentioned a minute ago, here I have this model lesson plan that I created. This is an example of the type of lesson plan that would receive a really high score for this assignment. It's very detailed. Notice how it's single-spaced for the most part, and it's 4 pages long. If your lesson plan is any shorter than 3 or 4 pages, it probably doesn't have enough detail. So you need to make sure that, a reader other than you looking at your lesson plan is able to visualize and understand what's happening in the lesson plan. So if yours isn't, as detailed as this, you might need to rethink it and work on it some more. All right, so I really recommend that you read over this model lesson plan so you have a clear idea of what it is I'm looking for you to do with your lesson plan. Let's move on and talk about the rubric. Again, you should really look at this on your own. You should read it before you start this assignment. You should review it again before you submit the assignment to make sure that you've covered all your bases and that you'll get the best score possible. So let's look at the different criteria for this. So one criterion is the alignment of standards, objectives, the assessment, and lesson procedures. So in week 5 of the class, I'm recording this before classes even started, but in week 5 of the class we will be talking about how to go through the process of planning a solid lesson and how to write a lesson objective, how to make sure that your objectives align with standards, and so forth. So with this lesson plan, I'm looking for you to make sure that you have Common Core State Standards for Writing identified in your lesson plan. You need to make sure that your lesson objectives align with those. You also need to make sure that your assessment and your lesson procedures align with your objectives and your standards. So, if you're watching this recording after week 5 has already taken place, all of that will make sense to you. If we haven't hit week 5 by the time you're looking at this video, it might be a little fuzzy, but don't worry, we will be talking about this in week 5 in a lot of detail. Okay. So appropriateness, your lesson plan should include some teacher talk, what it is the teacher is going to say to students at different points in the lesson. Obviously, your lesson plan is going to include a variety of activities for students to complete. Those need to be appropriate for the grade level that you selected. So if you're saying that, students in 2nd grade are going to sit down and write a 5-page essay in 1 hour in your lesson plan, well, that's not really realistic because most people, even adults can't really do that. So just, be reasonable, and your standards should really guide what students are working on in your lesson plan. Okay, so your lesson procedure needs to include that introductory activity designed to get students interested in the lesson. It needs to be engaging and include chances for students to interact with other students and with the teacher. Your lesson plan needs to address one of the 6 traits. You also need to include teacher modeling and guided practice, as I mentioned before. You also need to include independent practice. Students need to have a chance for them to apply what you're teaching on their own. So your book choice. You need to include a mentor text with your lesson plan. And you need to make sure that your book choice is appropriate for the writing trait that you are teaching in your lesson plan. All right, so it should be a good fit for your writing trait. So in terms of completeness, you need to complete every section of the lesson plan template. You cannot skip sections and receive full credit. And again, as I mentioned, your lesson plan needs to be very clear and very detailed. I don't want to feel confused when I'm reading your lesson plan. So please make sure it's very detailed. You can't have too much detail as far as I'm concerned. So if you have any questions about this assignment, please feel free to email, call, or visit office hours, and I will gladly lend a hand. Thank you.